I stood in a government waiting room in Providence, with a manila folder of documents proving who I was, and a clerk behind the counter told me I couldn't renew my passport because I was already married. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. The kind of laugh that comes out when your body doesn't yet believe what your ears just heard. I wasn't married. I had never stood in front of anyone and said, "I do." But according to the state of Rhode Island, on a Tuesday in October, Marisol Cabral had married a man named Owen Malloy at the Kent County Courthouse, and I had a certified copy of the marriage certificate to prove it, with my full legal name typed across the top in blocky official font, and a signature underneath that was not mine. My name is Marisol Cabral. I go by Mari. I grew up in New Bedford, Massachusetts, in a triple-decker on Cove Street 2 blocks from the smell of the harbor, in a family that had been hauling fish out of that water for 3 generations. I am a paralegal. I spend my working life organizing other people's proof, bills of lading, insurance claims, contracts, the paper trail that tells a judge what actually happened when 2 people disagree about the truth. I mention that because it matters later, because when my own life turned into a case file, I already knew how to build one. I have an identical twin sister. Her name is Daniela, Dani for short, and for 29 years people have been unable to tell us apart from more than 10 feet away. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, same small crescent scar over the left eyebrow from a bicycle accident when we were 7 that somehow scarred us both, because Dani, furious that I'd gotten hurt and gotten sympathy, rode her own bike into the same fence 3 days later and split her own eyebrow open just so we would match. That was Dani in one story. Whatever I had, she needed a version of it too, even if she had to draw blood to get it. Our mother, Fernanda, used to dress us in different colors, just so teachers could tell us apart. And even that didn't always work, because Dani would trade sweaters with me in the school bathroom and answer to my name for a whole afternoon, just to see if she could get away with it. She usually could. Our grandmother, Avi Lucinda, was the only person who never once mixed us up. She said Dani's eyes moved differently, that Dani was always looking for what she didn't have, and I was always looking at what was already in front of me. As a kid, I didn't understand what she meant. By the end of this story, I understood it perfectly. There was a ring. I should tell you about the ring early, because it matters more than anything else in this story, more than the wedding dress, more than the courthouse. It belonged to Avi Lucinda's mother, brought over from São Miguel in the Azores in a coat lining in 1951, a thin gold band with a single worn garnet that had gone dark and soft, looking with age. Avi Lucinda told us since we were girls that the ring would go to whichever of us married first. Married for love and not for show, and married a man who would stay. She said it like a blessing. Dani heard it like a countdown clock only one of us could win. I met Owen Malloy the summer I turned 26, at the state pier where the scallop boats tie up. Back when I was still doing intake work for a maritime law firm downtown, and had to walk the docks getting signatures from captains for a claims dispute. Owen ran his own boat, the Teresa Marie, 38 feet of steel and diesel smoke named for his late mother, and he had the kind of quiet, unhurried decency that you don't find twice. He wasn't flashy. He fixed his own winches, remembered the names of every deckhand's kid, and the first time he asked me to dinner, he apologized in advance for smelling like bait because he hadn't had time to go home and shower. I said yes anyway. 18 months later, on the deck of that same boat at sunset, with the whole harbor turning the color of a bruised peach behind him, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him, and I said yes so fast I startled a gull off the rail. Dani was the first person I called. She screamed into the phone, told me she was crying, told me she'd never seen a ring so perfect, and asked, almost as an afterthought, when Owen was going to meet the family properly, like she needed to get a look at him fast. I didn't think anything of it then. She was my twin. Of course she wanted to meet him. Dani liked Owen. Maybe too much, in a way I noticed and then talked myself out of noticing. The way you do with a sister you've spent your whole life making excuses for. She started showing up at the pier on days I couldn't get away from the office, bringing him coffee, telling him stories about, or childhood that always somehow centered her. She got a job tending bar at the Wharf Tavern, 3 blocks from where his boat docked, and told our mother it was a coincidence. Owen thought it was sweet, how close we were. I told myself the same thing. Dani had never held a job longer than 8 months, and never dated a man longer than 3. And some small cold part of me noticed that Owen was the longest thing in either category that had ever held her attention. But I buried it. Because that's what you do when the alternative is admitting your sister might be capable of something ugly. The wedding was set for the following June, at Fort Phoenix overlooking the harbor, and I'd already found the dress. A simple ivory sheath from a bridal shop in Fairhaven. The kind of dress Lucinda cried over in the fitting room, because she said it looked like something her own mother would have worn on the boat over from the islands. I'd already asked Dani to be my maid of honor. She said yes and hugged me so hard it knocked the air out of me, and I remember thinking, stupidly, that this was the moment our old rivalries were finally behind us. Then, in September, 9 months before the wedding, my mother's older sister in the Azores had a stroke, and there was no one else to manage things. The house, the small vineyard plot, the paperwork with the Portuguese consulate. So I flew to São Miguel to help settle her affairs while she recovered, expecting to be gone 6 weeks. 6 weeks became 4 months. The internet on that side of the island was unreliable at best. I called Owen when I could, on a cousin's landline, or a spotty cell signal up on the ridge above the vineyard, and the calls got shorter and stranger as the months went on. Though I told myself it was just distance, just static, just 2 people who loved each other stretched thin across an ocean. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't know for another 8 months, was that while I was in the Azores, Dani had let herself into my apartment using the spare key I'd given her for mail and plants, and had taken, one piece at a time so nothing would seem to go missing all at once, my Massachusetts driver's license, a certified copy of my birth certificate I kept in a lockbox for the wedding license paperwork, and an old expired passport I'd never bothered to shred. She had my social security number memorized the way you memorize your own, because for 18 years hers had been 1 digit off from mine, and she used to recite both like a rhyme. She had my handwriting down cold, because we'd forged each other's permission slips since the 4th grade, a stupid harmless childhood trick that I never once imagined was a rehearsal for anything. She told Owen I'd asked her to handle the marriage license paperwork early, as a surprise, so the wedding day itself would be simpler. A small, believable lie. The kind that works precisely because it's boring. She told him I was self-conscious about how thin I'd gotten from stress, and didn't want to do the courthouse photo in person, so she'd stand in for the license photo, and I'd sign the real certificate later at the ceremony. Owen, a man who trusted people the way some men trust gravity, without ever needing to test it, didn't question why his fiancé's twin sister was the one sitting across from a Kent County clerk with his fiancé's license in her hand. Twins swap being twins around like a party trick their whole lives. Why would this be any different? Except it was Rhode Island, a state with no waiting period, and one of the loosest marriage license systems in New England. And a justice of the peace named Raymond Kilbride, who Dani had found through a bartender's tip, because he ran quiet weekday ceremonies out of a function room behind a Warwick diner, and never asked too many questions. Except the clerk who processed the license that morning glanced at a photo ID that showed a woman who looked exactly like the woman standing in front of her. Because of course it did. Because they were identical, and stamped it without a second thought. Except somewhere in the space of one ordinary Tuesday afternoon in October, while I was 7 hours ahead of them cutting grape leaves off a trellis on a hillside in São Miguel. My sister put on a borrowed ivory dress that was not the one I'd chosen, stood across from the man I was going to marry, and used my name to say the words that were supposed to be mine. I came home in January, 10 pounds lighter, sunburned across the back of my neck, carrying a jar of my aunt's fig preserves, and a folder of Portuguese paperwork I still needed to file with our own consulate contact in Boston. Owen picked me up from Logan, and he was quieter than I remembered, but I told myself that was 4 months of distance settling back into place, the way it does with anyone. Dani hosted a small welcome home dinner at her apartment, made my favorite kale soup, and toasted to getting the wedding planning back on track. And I remember feeling, for one warm hour, that everything was exactly as I'd left it. The unraveling started with the mail. I'd had my mail forwarded to my mother's house while I was away, and it took the post office almost 3 weeks to catch up and redirect it back to my own address once I returned, so a stack of it arrived all at once on a Thursday in February. Catalogs, a jury duty notice, a renewal letter from my gym, and one official-looking envelope from the Rhode Island Department of Health, Office of Vital Records, addressed to Marisol S. Cabral. I remember standing at my own kitchen counter opening it, without any real thought, expecting a records fee or some leftover paperwork from years ago, when I'd needed a birth certificate copy for a passport renewal. Instead, I was holding a certified marriage certificate. My name, Owen's name, a date in October, a signature under my printed name that curled the wrong way on the S. That dotted the I too far to the right, in a hand that was almost mine and was not mine, because I signed my own name with a small flat dash instead of a dot over the I, a habit from a high school art teacher who told me dots were juvenile. And I have signed it that way for 11 years without fail. I sat down on my kitchen floor with that piece of paper for a long time. I want to be honest about what I felt, because it wasn't just betrayal, not at first. It was confusion so total it felt like vertigo. Like the floor of my life had been quietly swapped out from under me, while I was overseas cutting grape leaves and grieving my aunt's stroke. I thought about calling Owen right there. I thought about driving straight to Dani's apartment and screaming until the neighbors called the police. I did neither. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I folded the certificate back into its envelope, put it in my bag, and went to work the next morning like nothing had happened, because some old instinct from 6 years of paralegal training was already whispering the same sentence on a loop. Don't tip your hand until you have everything. A person who confronts too early gives the other side time to build a story. A person who waits, gathers, and documents gives them nothing but the truth. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell Avi Lucinda, who I knew would drive to Dani's apartment with the fire of God in her and ruin any chance I had of understanding what actually happened before Dani could sand the edges off it. The only person I told that first week was Desmond O'Keffer, a family law attorney 2 floors up from my office, who I'd gotten coffee with more times than I could count over 6 years of shared elevator rides and shared frustration with difficult clients. I brought him the certificate on a Friday after work in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the courthouse and watched his face change as he read it. "This isn't a prank," he said. "This is fraud. Identity fraud, and depending on how the license application was filled out, possibly perjury on a state document. But Mari, a marriage license fraudulently obtained isn't automatically void just because you say so. You're going to need proof strong enough that no judge and no family member can wave it away. You need the original license application. You need to know exactly what ID was presented and to whom. You need something that puts you somewhere else, provably, on that exact day." I thought of my passport, sitting in a drawer at home, stamped on both legs of that trip. I thought of my aunt's landline records, my flight itinerary, the customs declaration I'd filled out at Ponta Delgada Airport in October. The very week the certificate said, I'd been standing in a function room behind a diner in Warwick, Rhode Island, marrying a man I loved, without ever having been there at all. I spent the next 6 weeks building a file, the way I'd been trained to build one for a courtroom. Except the case was my own life. I requested my full passport scan history from the State Department, which took 3 weeks, and a notarized request form. And it came back with an entry stamp at Ponta Delgada dated 3 days before the Rhode Island wedding, and an exit stamp dated 11 days after it. Meaning there was no possible window, none, in which I could have physically been standing in Warwick signing anything. I pulled my aunt's landline phone bill from October, which she'd kept in a drawer, the way older women in our family keep everything, and it showed 4 separate calls placed to Owen's cell number on the very afternoon of the wedding, each one 11 or 12 minutes long, which meant that at the moment my sister was supposedly finishing her vows, I was on the phone with my fiancé from 7 time zones away, both of us unaware of what was happening under our own names. I drove to the Kent County Clerk's office in Warwick on a Tuesday I'd taken off work and requested a copy of the original marriage license application, not just the certificate, because Desmond told me the application would list exactly what identification had been presented. It took 2 visits and a written request citing my legal right to records concerning my own identity before a clerk named Odalis Ferreira finally pulled the file and let me see it under supervision. The application listed my driver's license number, correct down to the last digit, my birth certificate number, correct, and a notarized photo ID copy stapled to the back that showed a woman who looked exactly like me, wearing a green cardigan I recognized immediately because it was Dani's, not mine. A cardigan she'd bought at a consignment shop on Acushnet Avenue 2 winters earlier that I'd complimented so many times she used to joke it was technically half mine. I found Raymond Kilbride, the Justice of the Peace, at the function room behind the Warwick Diner where he still ran Tuesday ceremonies. And I didn't tell him who I was at first. I told him I was trying to locate a witness for a legal matter involving a wedding he'd officiated the previous October, and asked, carefully, whether he remembered the couple. He did vaguely. He said the bride had seemed nervous, kept glancing at her phone, and had asked him twice to make sure the paperwork matched what was on file. A strange request he'd found odd enough to remember 8 months later. When I finally showed him my own driver's license, he went pale and said, quietly, that he'd never have proceeded if he'd had any reason to doubt the documents in front of him, because Rhode Island law didn't require him to interrogate identical government-issued ID, only to confirm it matched the person presenting it, and it had. The hardest call was to Angela Freitas, who I'd known since middle school, who had been Dani's closest friend for most of our adult lives, and whose name I found listed as the official witness on the marriage certificate. I almost didn't make that call, because I was afraid of what it would cost me if Angela warned Dani the moment we hung up. I called anyway, on a Sunday, and told her the truth plainly. That I hadn't been at that wedding, that the woman standing next to Owen that day couldn't have been me, and that I needed to know what she'd actually seen. There was a long silence on the line, long enough that I thought she'd hung up. And then she said very quietly that she'd wondered, more than once, why Dani had made her promise not to post a single photo from that day anywhere online, not even privately, not even to her. Angela agreed to give a signed statement. It nearly fell apart twice. The first time, Dani called me 2 days later, out of nowhere, asking overly casual questions about whether I'd talked to Angela lately, and I had to sit on my own kitchen floor again, this time forcing my voice flat and easy, saying no, why, we haven't talked in months, while my hands were shaking around a phone that had Angela's actual signed statement sitting in a folder 4 feet away on my counter. The second time, I nearly walked into Dani at the Vital Records office in Providence, both of us there on the same Thursday for entirely different reasons, and I had to duck into a stairwell and wait 11 minutes with my heart hammering until she left the building. Because if she had seen the folder under my arm that day, everything I'd built would have collapsed before I was ready to use it. By April, I had all of it laid out on Desmond's conference table: the passport stamps, the phone bill, the marriage license application with Dani's photo stapled under my name, a signed statement from Angela Freitas, and a report from a forensic document examiner named Priscilla Awamet, who Desmond had retained to formally compare the signature on the certificate against 11 years of my own notarized signatures on file with my employer, and who concluded, in writing, that the certificate signature had not been produced by the same hand. It was, Desmond told me, more than enough. The only decision left was how, and where, and in front of whom I was finally going to use it. The moment picked itself. My mother, who still believed the wedding had simply happened quietly and sensibly at the courthouse, because Dani had told her I found big ceremonies stressful after the trip to the Azores, had spent months planning a proper celebration for us. At Fort Phoenix in June, the same overlook, the same month, almost the same day I had once picked for my own wedding to Owen. String lights, a borrowed sound system. AV Lucinda 81 years old. Insisting on bringing the garnet ring herself in a small velvet box. Ready to press it into what she believed were my hands. To bless a marriage she thought had finally happened the way she'd always hoped it would. For love, and for keeps. I let it happen. I let my mother send invitations with my name on them for an event celebrating a marriage that wasn't mine. I let Dani plan the menu. I sat through 3 dress fittings for a celebration dress I never intended to wear as a bride, because Desmond had told me, correctly, that the setting mattered almost as much as the evidence. That if I confronted Dani quietly in a kitchen somewhere, she would find a way to make it my word against hers in front of the only people whose opinions mattered to either of us. I needed everyone in one room. I needed AV Lucinda holding that ring. I needed Owen standing close enough to hear every word the first time, with no chance for Dani to get to him first and shape the story before I could set it straight. The night of the party, under the string lights at Fort Phoenix, with the harbor going gold behind us, my mother tapped a glass and asked me, in front of 40 people, to say a few words about my marriage. I stood up with a folder in my hand instead of a champagne glass, and I watched my sister's face change before I'd said a single sentence, because she knew, the instant she saw that folder, exactly what was in it. I didn't scream. I'd promised myself I wouldn't, and somehow standing there, I found I didn't need to. I said that I loved this family too much to let a lie stand at the center of it for one more summer, and then I read the passport stamps out loud. The entry and exit dates from Ponta Delgada that made it physically impossible for me to have been in Rhode Island on the day of the wedding. I held up the marriage license application, the one with a photograph of a woman in Dani's green cardigan stapled under my name, and passed it hand to hand so people could see it themselves instead of taking my word for it. I read Angela Freitas' statement, admitting she'd been asked never to share a single photo from that day. I read the line from the forensic document examiner's report stating plainly that the signature on the certificate did not match 11 years of my own. Owen didn't say a word for almost a full minute. I remember the silence more clearly than almost anything else that happened that night. The string lights swaying slightly in the harbor wind. My mother's hand pressed flat against her own mouth. AV Lucinda's fingers going white around the small velvet box in her lap. Then Owen turned to Dani and asked her, in a voice I'd never once heard him use, whether it was true, and Dani, who had spent 9 months rehearsing every possible version of this moment in her head, didn't deny it. She said she'd only meant to give herself a chance, that she'd loved him longer than I had, if you counted the months she'd spent bringing him coffee at the pier while I was overseas, that she'd always been the one standing in my shadow, and had simply, finally, stepped out of it. Nobody at that party thought stepping out of a shadow required forging a birth certificate and lying to a justice of the peace, and the silence that followed her words told her so more clearly than anything I could have said. The legal part moved faster than I expected once it started. Desmond filed a petition in Kent County to have the marriage declared void from the start, on the grounds that it had been entered into through fraudulent misrepresentation of identity, and attached the passport records, the license application, Angela's statement, and the examiner's report as exhibits. A judge granted the annulment in July, ruling that no valid marriage had ever existed between Owen Malloy and Marisol Cabral, because the person who had actually stood before the justice of the peace and signed that certificate was, by every piece of documented evidence, someone else entirely. The Rhode Island Attorney General's office opened a separate criminal referral once the court file crossed a clerk's desk, who recognized what she was looking at, and Dani was eventually charged with identity fraud and forgery of a public record. She took a plea deal rather than risk trial, received probation, a fine, and a permanent record that follows her now onto every job application and every background check for the rest of her life. A consequence I take no pleasure in describing, but no longer feel any need to soften either. Owen and I did not get married. I want to be honest about that, because I know the shape of this story makes people expect a wedding at the end. Some tidy bow where the rightful bride finally gets her rightful day. It didn't happen that way, and I've made peace with why. Something in Owen had gone quiet in a way that never fully came back. Not distrust of me exactly, but a kind of exhaustion with the whole shape of what our beginning had become. A marriage built on paper by the wrong woman standing in for the right one. We tried, gently for about 4 months, and then admitted to each other over coffee, at a diner near the state pier, that we were trying to rebuild something that couldn't be rebuilt in the same place it had been broken. He still runs the Teresa Marie. I still wave to him sometimes from the dock when I'm downtown for work, and it doesn't hurt the way I once thought it always would. Our family did not stay whole either. My mother didn't speak to Dani for the better part of a year, caught between 2 daughters in a way no mother should have to be. Avi Lucinda never gave Dani the ring, and never fully forgave her, though she did, eventually, sit with her one Sunday afternoon and tell her, in Portuguese, that stealing a name doesn't make it yours, it only proves you never believed your own was enough. I moved through that year slowly, rebuilding the ordinary things a stolen identity quietly wrecks. A new driver's license, a flagged credit file I had to spend months untangling, a passport application that took an extra round of sworn affidavits because my old one was still technically entangled in a fraud investigation. I finally renewed that passport in March. Almost a year to the week, after I first stood in that Providence waiting room and heard a stranger tell me I was already married to a man I'd never wed. I remember holding the new booklet in my hands outside the post office on County Street, running my thumb over my own photograph, my own name spelled correctly, my own signature underneath it, with the small flat dash over the I instead of a dot, the same way I've signed it since I was 17 years old, in a hand that belongs to no one but me. Avi Lucinda still keeps the garnet ring in its velvet box on her dresser, waiting, she says, for whichever of her granddaughters finally earns it honestly. I don't know if that will ever be me. But for the first time since that October Tuesday, I never knew about until months later my name, on every document that matters, finally belongs to only one person again. And that's the story of the garnet ring, meant for whichever sister married for love. The green cardigan stapled to a fraudulent marriage license. And the passport stamps from an island 7 time zones away that proved Mari couldn't possibly have been the woman standing at that courthouse. Because her own identical twin had already taken her name, her ID, and her wedding day. Now I want to know what you would have done. If you found a certified marriage certificate with your name on it, for a wedding you never attended, would you have confronted your sister immediately? Or could you have held it together for months the way Mari did, gathering proof before you ever said a word? Tell me in the comments. If this story had you hooked, share it with someone who'd love a good betrayal story like this one. It really helps this channel grow. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this channel is all about stories like Mary's, identity, family loyalty, and the moments that quietly change everything. There's another story coming soon. Until then, hold on to what's actually yours, and I'll see you in the next story.